Destination Africa, brought to you by Standard Bank.
Today we put the focus on Africa's agricultural sector, taking a closer look at the investment merit it boasts and, more importantly, how one actually goes about successfully investing in this space given some of the challenges that the industry faces. Joining me for this discussion is Dr Lawrence McCrystal. He's Director at Agrifica, Mohit, Arora, Director of Agriculture at Standard Bank, and then Bode Abikoye, who's the CEO of Aterios Capital, will be joining us from our studios in Lagos, Nigeria as well. Welcome to you all, and thanks so much for your time today. Mohit, let's perhaps start off with you and get straight into things here. Let's get a status update on where the agricultural sector is on the continent and how much of an investment drawcard it's actually putting on the table.
It appears the agriculture sector may be at a historic point due to a very unique convergence of very wide set of factors for the first time in history. And that is leading to an immense amount of equity interest from the investors. Now, when I say equity interest from the investors, it's not just private equity type. What I mean is commercial, agriculture, multinationals, local entities which are coming up the curve, and including, private equity, financial play kind of investors as well. So people are looking to take, long-term view on the sector on the continent now.
So there's that interest that's out there, Lawrence, with governments realizing that agriculture is an important facet for food security, of course, social stability, and then overall growth of any economy. How do we rate the willingness that's out there to work with investors to develop this sector of the economy?
I think it's changing, Alishia. The Millennium Development Goals that were set, a number of the governments have signed those. And the consequence of that is that they've got to put certain things in place in order to achieve them. Some of them have been quicker than others, and the ones that have been quicker have been the ones that have shown the greatest interest and the greatest understanding of it. And so we've got the CADAP movement, or the CADAP agreement, that is the development goals within the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, for agriculture. And to the extent that governments are taking it seriously, it's good. But it's variable. Across the surface of Africa, there are lots of countries and lots of governments. Some are taking it more seriously than others.
Let's look at South Africa, because I asked this question because not so long ago we had the drive-by the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, luring farmers its way to rebuild its sector, and quite a few of South Africa's farmers ventured down that path because of the lack of government support, they say, that they received from this end. How did you read that scenario that played itself out?
It's not in the past tense, it's still playing itself out. The tragedy is that South Africa was self-supporting in terms of food, and for the first time for many, many decades, in fact, probably this in 100 years, we are net importers of food. And to a considerable extent, that's because of all the uncertainty that's been created, the way that the whole land claim thing's being handled. It's quite appalling in some cases. And the way that announcements are made by ministers and then contradictory statements are made. It all creates this uncertainty. And as Mohit said, agriculture is a long-term investment. Nobody's going to invest in a farm that's subject to a land claim, even if the land claim hangs around for 10 years, which some of them have. So, unfortunately, we are still losing farmers. But it's good for Africa. And what we're saying to our farmers is, don't sell your farms here, become businessmen and open up, and we'll help you to open up in the rest of Africa.
There's certainly a role for that private sector investment in this space. Let's bring Bode into this discussion. Bode, in Nigeria, we've had the Minister of Agriculture highlight that the sector is one of the key priorities in a bid to improve the kind of contribution Africa makes to, or agriculture rather, makes to the economy in terms of job creation and export revenues as well. Run us through the kind of stride you're seeing being involved in the sector on that end.
Certainly, agriculture has been a key plank on which a lot of reforms are being made in Nigeria right now. A lot of our sectors are experiencing a period of reform right now. Agriculture has been one that the government is paying a lot of attention to. There are a lot of reforms going on between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Central Bank to provide both funding and the enabling environment for investors to be able to contribute to agricultural growth in Nigeria. There are policies from the central bank like the Commercial Agri-Credit Scheme that is targeted at providing funding for the growth of agriculture. Also, there's the Nigerian incentive-based risk lending program, which is being also championed by the Ministry of Agriculture and the central bank. So largely, the policy strides are in the right direction right now, and we expect to begin to see the impact of this on the national economy in a short while.
Of course, we talk about government and the role it should be playing to entice investors within or into this arena, Mohit. When it comes to foreign investment, and this is pertaining to most industries, there's an increased focus, over and above capital investment on beneficiation, and that's become a key criteria for African governments, to encourage or to support investment within various sectors of the economy. Are we seeing enough stride in that regard?
Going back to Dr. Lawrence's comment, it's a wide spectrum of how the governments are engaging with this. But if I could put out some metrics in terms of how the leverage this sector provides in terms of beneficiation, pulling people out of poverty, I think it's a factor of 3. It's 3 to 4 times that agriculture is more effective than any other sector in terms of bringing people up the curve. And that's been the experience in Latin America and Asia. Now that said, I think the first thing that the government, both from the commercial and beneficiation, I see it's the same side of, it's two sides of the same coin. And to attract investments as well as to bring people up on the curve, I think if they could focus on infrastructure, which is largely, just build the roads. In South Asia, which, compares sort of, very closely with Africa and some demographic factors, people do not live away from major roads beyond 1 hour. And in Africa, it's 4 to 5 hours.
Absolutely. Well, certainly that one of the challenges that presents itself to the industry growing moving forward. Lawrence, I guess taking things a step further when it comes to beneficiation would be looking at investors actually exploring partnerships with local entrepreneurs in the agricultural sector. Is that a trend that you see developing? Because for the foreign arm, it would be ideal to leverage off those who have the actual know-how and on-the-ground presence.
Absolutely. And you want to partner with people who know the environment. And we in South Africa know the African environment, so our farmers are very well placed to contribute in that regard. But the whole concept of the value chain, from primary production through to the packaged product in the supermarket shelf, is a very important element. And for foreign investors, to get involved in the processing element in that value chain is extremely valuable. To give you an example, soya, the growing of soya and the manufacturing of the oil, and then the soya meal that comes from it, and the human products as well. Now, focusing on that, it creates what we call in economics the linkage effect. You establish your processing plant and you get the guys producing the soybeans, and then it creates a new market for the produce, and it opens up the infrastructure because now there's a demand for the roads that Mohit is talking about. And it's just coming back to government's role. If it focused on helping to facilitate rather than trying to pass legislation, that's what we need.
Yeah.
Because the private sector can do the job. Governments can't run farms. That's proven all over Africa. It's the private sector, and what they must do is they must facilitate it for us.
Bode, let's get your view, because we've touched on a couple of issues here. The first being beneficiation and the kind of progress we're seeing there, what's hindering things on that front, but also finding the right partner to ride through. What are some of the challenges that present themselves in the agricultural space?
Well, in the case of Nigeria, the situation has been such that there has not been much investment in agriculture over the past couple of decades. So there's also the issue of there being very little experienced agricultural investment companies in Nigeria. The good thing about it is that there is a clear understanding of the local environment and the challenges that it represents. So there are a number of companies that are in Nigeria that are open to international partnerships, who will be able to support any investor that is looking to come into the Nigerian value chain. And I must emphasize here that focus is on the entire value chain, not on processing or production or post-production marketing. There is a whole range of entrepreneurs across the value chain who are open to international investors coming to partner for reasons of scale and the availability of capital.
But finding the right partner is imperative, though. So, you've got to go through a pretty rigorous process in terms of selection, who you partner with. What kind of criteria do you look at when it comes to where you make your investments?
We try to understand the crop or the product that we're going to go into and want to see the track record of the potential partners to be able to add value to the process. What have they done before, for example? Given what they have done before, what do you think should be done differently? And how are we able to put capital behind that to ensure that we achieve the overall objective? So it's a question of who is experienced in this area, who has done it before, who understands the local dynamics of the market and is able to bring value to our own investment activities.
Mohit, you touched on infrastructure as being a challenge. Of course, financing is another very big challenge. Just how easy is it to secure financing for agricultural products or projects in Africa? Because from the research I've been doing, one gets a sense that the financial sector in Africa still operates on a very conservative basis.
As you would imagine, it varies by country to country, but just looking at the banks, the domestic banking sector is maturing, and there are regional or international banks still active in the region, including us. Now, from perspective of credit capacity towards financing infrastructure, maybe let me take that, which is a bit closer to what we do. Including us, there are banks who would do 8 to 10 year risk on agriculture. So that is, project finance, infrastructure lending, and among the international banks, I think Standard Bank, is a bit of a unique. It's got a preeminent position when it takes, very term-oriented support towards infrastructure, farming side of things. So while we are able to lend to the individual borrowers, I think surely they can be. Some countries are doing a good job in terms of putting infrastructure projects out, getting the banks together, setting up legal frameworks so that, few banks can join hands with investors and finance the whole farming blocks, as we see increasingly. But I think a lot of countries need to focus on that. Developing roads, as I was saying, irrigation, which, individual farmers cannot do. You need much more collective effort, including electricity.
So let's leave that conversation, gentlemen, at this point for now. That's representing, of course, somewhat of the investment playing field that's out there. After the break, we take a look at areas of Africa's agricultural sector that hold the most opportunity for investment. So don't go away.